back. It's 10:29, a little bit of change. I may or may not have done this again. I keep forgetting to tell people that we're on TV, too. Alderman Meehan, how are we today?
Good.
You know, speaking of Zeke J. Bush, it was so cool to see you at the North Alton Godfrey Business Council and finally connected in person. And, you know, now that everything's kind of, the dust is settling a bit, how are you feeling?
Well, pretty good. Pretty good about things, I'm involved with a lot of different organizations within the city limits of Alton. North Alton Business is one of them, and Zeke J. Bush is a good friend and really a mover and shaker here in the community.
Absolutely. And if you don't mind, take us through the appointment. Alderman Brake has, been serving the city for a very long time and done some great things. It was time to him to, move down the road. How did your appointment come about?
Well, when I first came to Alton 30-some years ago, Bob Taus was alderman at the time, and eventually he left and became mayor, and that's history. Then Charlie Brake came in. I've known Charlie for 30 years. And, Charlie was having more and more health troubles. It's one thing to get old, but then sometimes have health problems too. So he was asking if I would be interested in possibly running or being an alderman if he had to step down. So that's why I came along, and he and I talked, and he wrote a letter to the mayor and asked that if in the event that he was forced to retire because of health reasons, if the mayor would appoint me, and the mayor said yes. So that's the way it kind of goes along. If an alderman is not able to finish their term, usually they have the right to ask the mayor to appoint someone that they would want in that position, because the voters have given Charlie Brake their vote of yes. So there's some authority in that will of his to have his own person to come in.
Absolutely. And take us through the first city council meeting after you're sworn in. How were the first festivities, we'll just call them?
Well, let's put it this way. Charles Brake read his letter of resignation, and it was accepted. There was applause, and then I was called forward, and I was sworn into office, as alderman for the 5th Ward. And then I basically took my chair with the other 6 aldermen.
So you hit the ground running, huh?
Yeah, and it's all the aldermen had to vote nay or yay on my appointment, and I received all 6 votes, which I was very happy about, because they're all good people. You know, all the people that serve as aldermen, alderpersons here in the city of Alton, they're all good people. They're trying to do the best they can for their ward, and we're working together as a group, as sitting aldermen, and we work with the mayor for the benefit of the community of Alton, Illinois.
Without a doubt. And on top of that, were you surprised at all, just circling back a couple of bits, were you surprised when Charlie called you and had this conversation and said, hey, John, would you be interested in really talking about this?
Well, since I've known Charles for such a long time, I would call him and we would talk, quite often.
Right.
So he was like a personal friend. So I knew he was struggling, and it really didn't come as too much of a surprise. He really wanted to finish out his term, but, that age has a way of catching up to you, and there's no stopping it. So.
Right. Well, and speaking about the 5th Ward, are there some things, too, that you're looking at, I don't want to ask you any, direct questions, but is there, an idea that you have that you'd like to start seeing implemented, or are you just kind of gauging right now?
But I'm really trying to getting to know where the ward is. If you draw,
it's true.
If you draw the map lines for the wards, the 7 wards, it's all over the place, and I'm sitting between 2 aldermen, Rosie and Stephanie Elliott of the wards on either side of me, and they were saying how one side of the street could be Ward 5 and the other could be Ward 4. So just, I want to go down to the county and get a detailed map. And I want to drive around. If I see people out in the yard, I want to stop and talk and introduce myself, I'm pretty well known in the community. I'm involved with a lot of projects and received a lot of support from community members. But I'd like to go out and meet some of the plain folk in the ward. And one thing I'd like to work on is something kind of hard to do, but I think it's so important that if neighbors would get to know each other.
I agree.
So often I've known people to live on a block for 10 years, and you ask who lives across the street, and they have no idea who they are. And I think it's good to get to know your neighbors, because they really, in this day and age, are your best security system if you ever have to be out of town. And you develop a family kind of a relationship. I mean, you're not kissing cousins.
Right, right.
But, these are good people, and you share something in common. You live on the same block. You live in the same ward. You live in the same community. Sometimes your kids go to the same school. schools. So I think you should, it's kind of a neat thing. I want to get people to connect with each other as much as I can.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you. It seems like you're right. This day and age, it's not, knocking on the door and handing that, tray of brownies over when you move into town. It seems like it's a little bit different, and I'd love to see that back. And speaking of just neighborhoods, and speaking of Ward 5 specifically, before your appointment, I was talking to a few folks in the ward that kind of knew that this was coming down the pipeline, and resounding, everyone said, no, if it's John, yes, absolutely. And what do you attribute that to?
Well, I don't know. I think I like to know my neighbor.
That's a good point.
And it's interesting. There are a lot of people moving into Alton, and sometimes there's a lot of negativity about the city of Alton. People are moving out. No, there are people moving in. My neighbor 2 doors down from me is from Melbourne, Australia, and he bought that house.
Wow. Really?
2 doors down from me, from Melbourne, Australia.
Did you know how he found out?
I think he found it somewhere online, and he just the dots connected for him, and he moved here from Melbourne, Australia. Honestly, and there's a lovely home right across the street from the Lovejoy Monument. That's not my ward. I believe that's Mr. Strabel's ward. Mm-hmm. African American professor of culture from University of Illinois.
Wow.
Has redone that house, and she's planning on retiring here. So there's a lot of activity going on all over the city, and some of the, let's say, concerns, some of the problems, they don't just happen in Ward 5. There's all the wards have some common problems, and trying to clean up our neighborhoods and have a positive image and that kind of stuff.
Without a doubt. And on top of that, I think what you just hit on earlier is just kind of circling back to that knowing your neighbor. It goes a long way when it comes to these issues that we're facing, because if we all got to know each other a little bit more and be out there for each other, I think life would look pretty good.
And even those neighbors that sometimes you might have had some problems in the past. When I first came here, there was a little bit of a tiff between a neighbor and I. Now we're best friends, because we both reached out to each other, and that's important to reach out. Sometimes when there's a conflict in a ward or there's a conflict on the city council,
yes,
if there's nothing wrong with conflict, but just reaching out in a positive way.
Absolutely. And I was going to my next part about communication, because you're absolutely right. And is that something that you're looking to really be a part of, is just the communicative process and having those conversations?
There's a lot of things you could do today. I think like opportunities like with Facebook and things like that.
Oh, absolutely.
But I think the personal contact. I have some cards made up, business cards, and go around and visit people and just get to know the ward. So when I drive down the street, I say, yes, this is my ward, or this is, Rosie Brown's ward, and things like that.
It's so funny. I was talking to Alderwoman Allen the other day, and we were talking because I just moved into my house in North Alton. I go, I don't know what ward I'm in. I'm one of your guys' problems, Yeah. But you're right.
Well, some people really don't. They don't know what ward they're in.
It's
they
true.
Don't know who their alderman is. It's really not their fault, but but
to have that map would be nice to kind of get.
But it is on your voting right. card what ward you live in, where you vote.
Right. And when you moved into town, you said what, 33 years ago?
32 years ago. I bought my house. I had a contract on it at Christmas time, 1989.
Oh wow.
Then moved in 1990.
And what was one thing that just took you away from this community right off the bat?
Well, I think the history of this place is really marvelous, and it's just a great place to live. So much rich history. I was just researching in 1830, which is a number of years ago. The population of Alton, according to the 1830 census, was 2,100 people. The population of Chicago, 300. So at one time, Alton had 7 times the population of the city of Alton.
No way! That is incredible.
Yeah,
I would have never have thought that.
Yeah, well, we settled from the south coming up,
You're right.
And we had the river. The river. I'll say it again. The river was the way. Mm-hmm. This was before trains, before no roads. Benjamin Godfrey built a road from Alton Godfrey to bring product down to the river. So the river is so important, and Alton has a rich history. Some not so good history.
It's true.
You can't deny the reality of that, but so much wonderful history.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, as you're, kind of, getting your, feet on the ground and you're starting to move forward here, representing the 5th Ward, is your plan to run again, after this term's up, or see how it goes?
Well, the way this works out, when Charles Brake resigned, I fill out the remainder of his term. So
Right.
it gives me about 2 years to get an idea, I'm not particularly a young chicken anymore, I'm a mature fellow. I'm 70 years old, but we'll see how things go.
Mm-hmm.
How things go.
And if, anyone in the 5th Ward is wanting to reach out, maybe a business owner that wants to get to know you a little bit, is there a way yet to reach out?
Well, I believe if you call City Hall, my name and my information is on file there at City Hall. I live right across the street from East School on Washington
Oh,
Avenue.
yeah, absolutely.
And I own 4 homes right across the street from East School. So that's a pretty significant point in our ward, right on Washington Avenue.
Absolutely. And just circling back to what we touched on earlier with organizations, how important are these organizations for the longevity of, the community, whether it's downtown in that district or in Upper Alton or, throughout North Alton or just the Riverbend region as a whole?
I believe in volunteerism. If there is such a word, I believe there is. There are so many opportunities for people within the city limits of Alton to get involved.
Yep.
Yeah, either as a business, as a person. You could get involved with churches. There are outreach programs. There are special school programs that are sponsored to help kids that struggle in schools. There's volunteers are needed at the public schools, and there are just so many opportunities to be involved with the community that goes beyond just you living in a house on Washington Avenue.
True. You're absolutely right. And to me, I kind of get on the soapbox here because I talk to my generation all the time and go, guys, let's get out there, because we have all these organizations on. And everyone's facing a similar problem. It's that the volunteers that built the organization are starting to get a little bit older. They need somebody to come in and help, kind of take that next generation. And I really hope that we can get some younger folks out there too really start contributing, because we are, but we need a little bit more,
Oh yeah.
And with that being said, I just think the appointment was definitely necessary, and I'm so excited to see what you're doing here on the city council. And now, did you have anyone call you, any of the alder people call you and go, all right, John, here's some advice for you?
Well, all the aldermen have been very gracious. Jim.
Good.
Yeah, all of them. I sat down at that chair that Charles Brake has sat in for so many years, and immediately Rosie next to me wrote her phone number. She said, "Call me if you need anything."
That's
How about
awesome.
that? Just right before the meeting, call me if you want to. I'd be glad to help you out. And she's one of she's not been an alderman that long, So I respect that. I did have a chance to go out to lunch with Miss Elliott, and a wonderful lady, and then I know Betsy, and I know Carolyn and Ray, and all the alder persons. They're all good people.
They really are. And did you have a conversation with Mayor Goins before you took the appointment?
Yeah, the mayor had called me in the office because he knew of me and about me, and he just wanted to sit down, and I had a chuckle when I was walking from his desk, office area, front desk, to his table conference area. I said, "Mr. Mayor, have you ever had decisions that cause you to lose sleep at night?" And he looked around and he said, "Oh, yes." So, the mayor and I talked, he never asked me like how I would vote or anything like that, but you never vote in a vacuum. You have to say yay or nay, and you have to have your own personal feelings. You have to get the vibrations that you're getting from your constituents, and you want to do what's best for the city.
And now that's exactly, I don't know if you're reading minds today too, but it was a perfect segue, because that's what I was going to ask you. To me, I've never, even thought about an alderman or, what that would take to lead a ward or, a part of the community. But how is that, whenever you're looking at these things going forward, because, we're just getting started, is it going to be, do you think, a little bit of a learning curve to go, well, what do I want to, then what is the needs of the ward want?
Yeah. Well, I am alderman and I am a resident.
Right.
And I'm a member of the community of the 5th Ward.
Yeah.
But I have my neighbors, and now I just have more neighbors.
That's true. That's a great point.
But so because I do that neighborly kind of a feeling is a good thing, you know. So I'm hoping. Sometimes I'm not at all. I'm familiar with just stopping in front of a nice house and complimenting someone. And my gosh, your yard looks great. Or thanks for picking up papers around the circle by St. Anthony's Hospital and things like that.
Well, and it goes back to what we started with this conversation, being a neighbor. You know, I mean, to me, that goes a long way when you're going, hey, your yard's looking great. You know, Mike Smith, thanks for, it really looks good.
Yeah.
That goes a long way. And I'm excited to see, this neighborly bond, hopefully overtaking all the Fifth Ward and coming back to the city of Alton again.
Yeah.
And, seriously, Alderman Meehan, thank you so much for stopping by. I told you
Yeah.
15 minutes, we talked for 20.
Well, that's fine. Well, thank you. Thank you for your time.
And seriously, nothing but the best. If you have anything you want to talk about, anything you're working on, feel free to give me a call and get right back in the studio.
Thank you.
And I'll see you at the North Alton Godfrey Business Council meeting.
Yes.
1044, a little bit of change on this Tuesday in downtown Alton. It's the 18th day of July. We'll take a quick break. We'll come back, wrap up this bad boy after this one in downtown Alton.